Joining us now to go in depth, former INS and DEA officer Michael Cutler. Michael, once again, we thank you for joining us here on America's Forum. And Michael, we're glad to have you, sir. And as we begin, what is the latest you are hearing?
Well, first of all, one of my good friends just went down to the border, told me that he's not seeing so many children, and the sheriffs aren't, so much as older teenagers, perhaps late teens, early 20s. That raises the issue of the potential for gang members coming into the United States. And, you know, we have a problem even with 13 and 14-year-olds joining gangs. I saw this when I was up at DEA. You know, my career with the INS spanned some 30 years. And what we've always seen is that the impact of illegal immigration is always shared by an impact of drug trafficking. Smugglers are smugglers. And right now, we're in the midst of the worst heroin epidemic, arguably, in the history of the United States. They're giving the antidote to heroin overdoses to police departments across the country. And it's the entire country. You're right. Look, New York is where DEA claims to have seized the greatest amount of heroin in the last year. 35% of all heroin seizures were made inside the state of New York. I think the American people are finally waking up to just how seriously all of this impacts them no matter where they live in the United States.
And your friend's impression of what's transpiring on the border, backed up by that Pew report last week, having, what, over 80% of these aliens coming in being juveniles, really being teenagers between the ages of 14 and 18. Michael, I want to move to a couple of different states and their response. Sure. On the border, Texas, at long last, Governor Perry calls out the National Guard. Will he be able to use that guard at its most effective status?
Well, anything you could put down on that border right now is a welcome relief. You know, we have to plug the holes in that system. But it's really a system. And, you know, every time the president and other politicians talk about implementing comprehensive reform, providing benefits to people who are here, they're really firing the starter's pistol for aspiring illegal aliens. By the way, not only in Latin America, but throughout the world. But I think that Perry is starting to feel the heat from his own people. Remember, he's the guy who said that allowing these folks in and providing them with lawful status was an act of love. And I had quipped at one point that that's like looking for love in all the wrong places.
Well, let me offer a friendly amendment. I believe that's former Florida Governor Jeb Bush who spoke of...
I'm sorry, you're right. Yes. My error, I apologize.
Well, but to the point about Governor Perry, we have seen him, indicative of a lot of different folks in public office, get tough on the border and then almost come back the other way. Now he's maintaining his toughness. It'll be interesting to see how he employs the National Guard. More on Texas in just a few minutes. Let's turn to Tennessee. Today, the governor there, Bill Haslam, is complaining about the Obama administration sneaking in 760 illegals without even informing him of it. Now, Governor Haslam has written a letter to President Obama saying it's unacceptable that he became aware of this on an HHS website. What can Governor Haslam and the other governors do in the wake of what the administration is doing, bringing these kids into their state without any notification?
It's a tough call. I mean, the federal government, as you know, as a former congressman, has a lot of authority. But the voices have got to be heard, and they should be reaching out to every member of Congress from those states and applying pressure to them and make it understood to them, especially the the House delegation, that their jobs are on the line in November, and that if they don't put proper pressure on the administration, that they may well pay the price on Election Day. Don't you think that would be effective as a former congressman?
Well, there can be nothing more effective than that, Michael, than the voters weighing in on Election Day. But I want to ask you about Congress specifically. Sure. This week there may or may not be a deal, and we're looking at a lot of money potentially here on the line here, billions of dollars. What's your take here? Will you be disappointed if Congress does not act this week on some sort of emergency funding bill to deal with this crisis?
Well, I think we need to have the money and the resources to do it. But my big concern is what the administration will then do with the money. You know, every time they get money, somehow the money doesn't go where it's supposed to go. Let's remember Rahm Emanuel famously saying that you should never waste a crisis, that a crisis provides opportunities to do things you might not otherwise be able to do. In this case, my concern is that if you give the Obama administration money, it will go everywhere and anywhere but for where its stated purpose is. I don't think anybody trusts this supposedly most transparent of all administrations. Someone needs to send them some glass cleaner, I think.
Michael, I want to go back to some of the figures that have come in here given the theme of transparency. We're taking a look at these juveniles being sent across the country, and according to HHS, Texas leads the way with a little under 4,500, then New York, Florida, California, Virginia, and Maryland. The final state there listed over 2,205. I'm hearing talk, we just touched on Tennessee, Oklahoma, the state I represented in Congress, Arizona. Can we basically expect the administration just to disperse these illegal juveniles to areas throughout the country if nothing is done to stop this?
Absolutely. And, I have another concern, and this is something everyone should think about. If they're here with their illegal alien parents, then we're staging family reunification inside the United States for illegal alien adults. If they're coming unaccompanied, then the next war cry that we're likely to hear is, well, now we've got to bring the families here to reunify them, because this administration clearly has no desire to move expeditiously to remove them from the United States. I wonder if you think that I'm right on that concern, JD.
Well, I will tell you this, Michael. We take a look at what is going on in terms of to whom these illegal juveniles are being released. Many of the, quote, sponsors are illegals themselves. So
right.
You're heaping illegality on top of illegality. A couple of notes. We just a moment ago showed the lead story on our parent website, Newsmax.com. John Cornyn saying the House wants a skinned-down bill. In other words, maybe $1 billion, some sort of action before the August recess. Michael, in your mind, is it better for Congress to take no action than to pass any financial aid that the president will basically use however he wants to use to try and do something here?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we need to do. I would rather have no bill than to give this president what he wants, again, because of my concern about what he may do with that money.
Well, obviously, you're a man in demand as we hear the telephone ringing. But what about those around the country?
Sorry to do this.
No, don't you worry about it. It's real life. But I have a minute left. And during my days in the House Republican Conference, often we would take a look at what the newspapers were saying, and suddenly there's this big drive saying there needs to be something done. Congress should not go on recess. So do you believe in the final analysis that something will happen this week, good, bad, or indifferent?
Boy, this is really a horse race, because there is such a conflict between what we need to do, what the administration is likely to do, and what the perceptions of the voters are. Certainly, Congress can't be deaf to the demands of their constituents, but I really don't think that anybody at this point has any trust for this administration, and that mistrust has been, soundly deserved when you look at everything that has happened. Going back several years now, especially where immigration is concerned. A final thought: the president keeps talking about the failures of the Congress to act. Isn't it remarkable that even when they voted down bad legislation, they refer to that as being a failure to act?
Well, as always, we get different perspectives, and Michael Cutler, we thank you for your perspective. Now, we'd welcome your perspective. Why don't you tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum.